Skaha Park would be one that's being used by tickleberries. I look at what's happened in the last year, and I don't know where that approval takes place, where before it wasn't a tinted building, it wasn't pink and white with bears on the side. It was simply a place where you could buy ice cream. And now it's tickleberries advertising stand, and the place where the First Nations had their stand is now labeled tickleberries, and it's painted pink, it's not being used. So there's a lot of advertising going on there. One of the things that I appreciate in the park is being able to move out of a commercial zone, to move into a place of peace, where there are trees and ocean, a lake and sky and birds, and not commercialization. I see plenty of that. I know advertising is important. So my question is, where do those decisions get made? Does that take place simply at City Hall behind the bureaucratic wall? Like, yes, George, you can do that, or you can't. That speaks to the point that I made last year regarding the big magnetic sign out for a trio that they had in the parkland. I called City Hall and I said, hey, they're not supposed to have a sign outside of their property. I was told over the phone, get used to it. We can do what we want. I'm paraphrasing. So I called again the next day, hoping to get someone else. I was told they've actually leased the whole park, that part of the park, that's their address, they can put a sign there. So I looked at the boundary outline on the map, outlined what trio had rented. I went down to City Hall. I pointed that out to the person at the desk who was with whom I was speaking. And the person said yes. So I said, it says in the bylaw, and I stated it because I researched it, that you can't have your sign anywhere else but the place that you're renting or owning. You've got to be advertising within the space you own. He said, you didn't look at Section 9. Section 9 says we can let them do whatever they want. So what I'm getting from this is that there are agreements being made without transparency. And I don't know. Peter, as you move forward in your job, I hope you can unmuddy the waters. like I would like to know that when things take place, it's taking place in a way that's equal for everybody. It looks to me like the city just bent over backwards for Proteau differently than they do for Johnny's Barbershop or Mary's Hair Salon. Thanks for listening to me.
Hello. Can you hear me now? No? Is it on? No. Oh, no, I know.
Peter, my name's Peter Dewey, and the function of the city is to promote and to provide and to protect public parks. So, on that basis, that being their job, I want to return this to the Skaha Park Society people, and I take my comment from Jerry Carr. I wish to support his point of view that he has deep concern about the alternative development process, that approval process. There is a case right now, just for information, there is a case in the province of British Columbia wherein in the municipality of Surrey, BC, the citizenry has been trying to stop a major roadway through their most significant park. The city council wants to put a roadway through their city park. And the citizenry was given a limited time. It was launched in the summer when it was nearly impossible to get people to canvass other people and to get the required number of signatures. So it failed. It failed even though he got 11,000 votes. It wasn't sufficient to meet the requirement of the alternative approval process. So my point is simply this. It depends on the goodwill of the council in relation to park protection. Was the road more important, and did it have to go through the park? But that they launched it in the summer made it more than difficult for the group opposing to get sufficient votes. So that's my concern, and I think I share this strongly with Jerry, over the alternative process. It will work, but only if there's goodwill amongst all parties. Thank you.
I have two questions for Mr. Weaver. My name is James Miller, and I live on Comox Street. I'm a citizen of this community. These are questions, they're not comments. Number one, Mr. Weaver, if you have been following the news, maybe not as closely as I have, there's a hockey dorm trial where a business person who the city chose to do business with is presently a fugitive of the law with a Canada-wide warrant on him. The other co-accused or whatever is presently, I guess it's before the courts, and a verdict is pending. Having sat through there, it is obvious, and I think it's fair to say, that they didn't have the financial means to take on such a project. And I've heard the hockey dorm compared with Skaha Park before, but I want to know, was proof of financing from Trio Marine Group ever seen by city staff or council, yes or no?
Well, I don't answer yes or no questions. That's a game that people play sometimes. Not interested. But I'll answer the question, but not with a no or a yes. The answer to that question is that before that agreement was terminated, they were required to meet certain conditions after the date was August 1st. Like that the agreement had to be either ratified or not ratified to the next level after August 1st. The city terminated the agreement prior to August 1st. So if they had not have done that, if they would have continued on, the Trio Group would have had to demonstrate a viable business plan, and even then, the agreement wasn't totally finalized. But what would have happened was, if the agreement didn't go through after the August 1st deadline, we would have been subject potentially to other damages. Like the agreement was, it was in the release we did. This is not very complicated. If it happened at this date, the city's exposure would have been $200,000. After this date, there was no limit to exposure. So to answer your question, absolutely they would have had to demonstrate financial viability, and that would have been based on the viability of the business, which was not viable, and probably because we lost the main the revenue generator, which is this water slide concept. And also they don't have liquor licensing there, which the city wasn't supporting either because it would have disrupted leases. And I read about that in the papers too. We never really commented too much on that because I believe that the city did remove all stops to try to support liquor licensing, but that ended very early in the year once I realized that, and you gotta give me a break because I just got here in January and I was up to speed by the time council gave me the mandate to get involved. It was April, May. I wasn't involved really other than research up until that point.
I'm not here to play games with you, sir.
Well, the yes or no stuff's a game.
No, that's not a game, sir. I asked you a question, and it was a fair question.
Well,
I do respect your time. I'm not playing games. I asked a question. I thought it was a fair question.
Yeah.
And I think everyone in this room respects that you did inherit. I don't want to say problems, some issues. And
well,
I think everyone's grateful that you're here to say it. So if I can ask a sub-question to that, my wife and I just recently purchased a home here, and obviously we had to get it partially financed. Asked, I guess, a lot of personal questions, which also involve my employer signing off, verifying what I had said. With proof of financing, should that not be like the first thing that comes into play before you do a major transaction?
Well, they do have a current lease on that facility, and that the longer-term lease was subject to financing. So currently, they have a lease till fall 2018, and they don't have a lease beyond that. What happens to that property in the future, and that's limited to the marina and the restaurant, will go through a defined process, which hopefully I'll still be here. But I'll be watching this very closely. Anything that comes to the city system is 100% my responsibility to vet, whether it be a hockey dorm, annexation, Trio Marine Group proposal, or whatever comes through that system. If I'm not watching closely, I'm not paying attention, the city's exposed to bad business deals, just like any other business. Like to think the city is the only one in the world that makes bad business deals. If you watch the news, Sears is having a hell of a time right now. But everybody's in receivership. You know, Donald Trump's the president. I mean, we go on and on and on. But nobody's perfect. And I'm saying the city wasting any dollars, the taxpayer dollars, is not acceptable. But there's one person responsible for city business before it gets to the council table, and that's the CAO, whoever that may be, and the staff. So if the information they get from us is good, then the city will do good business if council, typically makes good decisions. And I've seen this council make some good decisions since I've gotten here, and they give me full control of the city, which is a sign that they care. Because I'm not an easy person to get along with when things aren't going well. And my staff can tell you that. I have high expectations, and that goes with all city business. And I wanted to add, there was a comment by the other gentleman. He said, if somebody spoke to him on the phone in a way he didn't like, if somebody speaks to you on the phone in a way you don't like, then you phone me directly and tell me who that person is, and I will deal with them directly, because that's unacceptable. That's my standard, and I will always treat you with respect. All I expect is the same in return.
Okay, and I have a second question, and I'll sit down because it doesn't require a follow-up. Why the $200,000 buyout to Trio at the end of the season?
Would mean the timing of it?
No, why are you paying them $200,000?
That was part of the original agreement. I wasn't present for the negotiation, but any agreement, whether it be an employment agreement or a business deal, there usually is a clause that says, you know what, if things aren't going the way we want them to go, that we agree that we'll leave on these terms. And whether it be half the house or with the car or $200,000, whatever those terms are, every agreement has them. Essentially, it was a termination of a relationship. So, yeah, there had to be something, and that was what they had chosen. I think the city, and I guess this is an interesting point, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I'll say it, is that when the water slide was taken from that deal, that could have went very wrong for the city, because, I mean, they had a deal that was made in good faith, and all of a sudden you've taken the main revenue generator out of that deal. I think if as a business person, and I am a business person, private sector born, and government today, but I would have been looking very carefully at my options at that point, and the city was fortunate in that Trio did work with them to modify the agreement, and it didn't cost the city more than that.
I'm sorry. I do beg to differ that the water slide was going to be profitable. I think at best, you had a 90-day operating season. If every day was hot, there was no rain, there was no smoke. The ecologists will tell you smoke, unfortunately, sadly, is the new reality. I never saw a business plan. I think a lot of kids would have had to go down that slide at $25 an hour. And I think there's a reason that wonderful Water World and the other places have gone out of business, why Red Deer has gone out of business, why West Edmonton Mall. So I don't think the thing would have ever been profitable. So that's my opinion. I don't have your business experience. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'll leave you folks with one final comment that, we learned from the past, and we use those lessons to define the future. Your future is this policy. Whether I'm here or not, or Gary or Jerry or whoever is gone in 6 months, this policy will endure, and it will be approved by you, and then it will be approved by council, and it will protect your parks in the future, bottom line. And someone said in the back before, we thought we had it nailed in 2002. Well, it wasn't. So this time it will be. And that's all I can say.
I'm sorry, but I got to cut Peter off here because of the time. You can ask Peter any question because he is staying around.
Can I make a comment, please? I'm just going to stand here.
Only if it praises me and tells me I'm good looking. Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the phrases that was used.
Speak into the mic, please.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the phrases that was used here that caught my attention was the good I think that's going to be very paramount to everything that goes on in the future. Because I am waiting to see the Good Buildings Council. And the other thing is, if we still have to maintain ourselves as a ward over this council until everything is finalized, and if that means changing our Save Skaha Park Society to Save Penticton's Park Society, let's make that change. So we
Thank you.
Jay,
Yeah,
may I just ask one very quick question? It should be quick. I would like to know, Judy Shins, by the way, and Gary and Jerry both mentioned that in this new proposal, we have the parks surveyed. So I would like to know who will be paying for these surveys. Is this something the city is requiring or that our society is requiring, and who will be paying?
No, that'll be the city's responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, and Gio got 200,000 termination. I got free parking for the rest of my life. Anyway, while this discussion and question period was going on, I just had a vision come to me, looking at today's weather. For example, as I said earlier, can you imagine Skaha Park with a water slide in it today? I'm glad we turned this around. Really glad we turned this around. And I've overlooked something here this evening. I know this lady's going to be upset with me, but I do recognize former Mayor Dorothy Whitaker, now Dorothy Tenney, sitting in the audience here. Part of my responsibility to recognize you as I serve with you on council. Anyway, we're now on the reports, the agenda, so we're going to move through this pretty quick because we've still got quite a bit to go. And as I said, I'm going to try and wrap this up by 9 o'clock because I think it's important for all of us to recognize that the ball game might still be going on. Okay, directors' reports. Treasurer's report. Sir. Just a quickie over here. That's English language. Lenore, do you have some thoughts? You want microphones?
Hi. I'm not going to belabor this because you've all got the reports in front of you, but just a couple of highlights from the director's report from last year. In November, it was a banner month for us because we were delighted when the Trio water slide deal ended. That was good news for everybody. Subsequent to that, our own Gary Denton was able to make really good inroads with the PRMP when he introduced and managed to have the committee pass unanimously the motion to have as a recommendation the removal of the notwithstanding clause from bylaw 2002-42. You saw that as a huge. Sorry.
Into the microphone.
Okay. And then also, Jerry Carr and Carol A., also members of our committee, were able to be part of a subcommittee of the PRMP and are responsible for making significant positive changes to the vision and value statement. So that was another thing that we were very proud of. And throughout that time, we have been able to make and offer regular communications to our members. Since January, we sent out, I have it written down here, 11 general updates reporting on our progress, and an additional 9 that were AGM specific. So if there are no questions, are there any questions about the director's report? Okay, then I move the motion to accept the director's report.
Second on the motion. Seconder. Any questions on the report? See no hands, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. I'm speaking to us, Tam here. Talk about being rusty, I'll tell you. I'm going to have to go back to Robert's Rules of Order, do lessons in education. But anyway, sorry about that. Next. Wait. You won the microphone.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming. First and foremost, what I want to do is thank Bill went down. Bill has done a tremendous amount of work for the society in terms of financial statement and submission of the income tax report. So I want to thank him. He's dedicated his time to that, so it's a tremendous thing that he's done for us. 2 years, this is the second year he's done that. Very briefly, basically, our fiscal year starts around September 1 to August 31st of this year that just passed. Because of the success of raising money that we had basically in over 2015-16 fiscal year, and the cancellation of the water slide agreement, basically, we did not actively really pursue any fundraising activities this year. But despite that, we still raised $2,199 for our legal fund. With respect to expenses, all expenses, of course, as I've mentioned before, have to be approved in advance by SSPS directors. Any check that's signed, it has to be signed by 2 directors as well. The expenditures for this past year, the past fiscal year, 2016-17, were $20,541. The largest expense was for legal fees, not surprising, $16,764, which was really 82% of expenditures this year. The annual general meeting, last year's general meeting was held first in this fiscal year, and it was $1,655, which was about 8% of our expenditures. Office expenditures were $1,191, which is about 6%. Office expenditures, about 85% of that though, is everybody gets an email that I send out. We have to pay monthly for use of that mass email system. You can't use Gmail or anything of that nature. We also have to pay survey monthly basically for the survey that was sent out. As well, we also have our website and so on. We have to pay for domain fees for that. Advertising was $711, that was only 3%. We did much less this year because we didn't really do any fundraising. That was the bulk of last year. As I mentioned, no form of compensation is paid to any directors, volunteers, or anybody in this association, in this society. The only reimbursements for expenses that have been approved by the directors in advance. And based on one other thing, basically, is I'd like to just very briefly go over the results of the survey Saturday. Okay. Based on that, then I'd like to make a motion to accept the financial statement as presented in the package, the AGM package. Seconder?
Is there a seconder on the motion? I have a seconder on the motion. Is there any questions on the report? I see no hands. Therefore, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion is carried. Thank you. Gentlemen.
The next point on the agenda is legal liaison subcommittee, and that's Jerry Carr and myself, and we basically covered our legal activities that led up to the proposal, so that's done. The next item is City of Penticton Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which we refer to as the PRMP, and it's a report that I'll make very short in respect to the time that we have left. I've touched on it. The PRMP, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, is going to be a vital part of what makes the protection of our parks work. We can have a bylaw, but we need to have a policy for public consultation, and that's being developed. We do need zoning. Zoning takes place in parks. All land within a city has to be zoned. And at the moment, there's 1 zone or 2 zones for parks, and there may be 6. But that's to better define what is an appropriate use in different zones in parks. There are recommendations in the PRMP at the draft that disturbed many of us on the committee. And there's 2 other members I've seen tonight. I hope I haven't missed anyone. One is Peter Dooley that spoke briefly about the need for goodwill in council. Another one is Sharon Devlin, that is here. We discovered that there were a number of recommendations. There's key recommendations. They included Ben Amos, a mention of a stage and a green room in Okanagan Park. We have asked to have those removed unless we have specifically debated them, and they're not within the scope of work. So we're having those removed from that document. so that they can't look back and say, well, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan recommended something that we didn't even discuss. But things are moving along. I think that the document is going to be very valuable, and the council will have to refer to that policy in order to move any proposal along. And if they don't follow the policy, then it's for the citizens, as usual, to object and to bring them back into line, or if it's that serious, then you can protest to the point where beat them into submission. I would like to mention also a thank you to David Pristay of the Lakeside Resort. He has been David, the owner, and his staff have been supportive of our parks group from the very beginning. He's given us meeting room, meeting space. He's provided refreshments and water and coffee, and he's really bent over backwards to be a friend of parks. I'll make a motion, looking for a seconder to accept my verbal report on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan Committee.
Second on the motion, is the seconder. Is there any questions, further questions of Gary and Jerry? Yes.
I just have one question, Gary, in terms of the liaison with the Parks Master Plan and the OCP, because there was some mentions of zonings and stuff like that. Are you waiting for an invitation from the official community plan task force to come and speak to them so that they know what your plan is before they go ahead doing something different? And I speak as the vice chair of that committee, by the way.
Of the OCP?
Yeah, the official community plan task force.
That'd be a question to put to the chair of the steering committee, to ask him if you should come to us or we should come to you, but if there should be some communication.
I definitely think there should be some communication, so we'll figure that out.
Yeah, there should be some communication. And that gives me a chance to mention one other thing. We've made huge progress in this. When I arrived there a year and a half ago, in April, there was a major section called 7.1, commercial use policy. Was that it, Peter? Commercial use policy. I think we've succeeded in removing that in its entirety, and it's going to be called park use policy. I spent hours on the internet looking for another master plan that had a section on commercial uses in parks, and I couldn't find them. I mean, it's just an oxymoron. So I think we've made a lot of progress, and we should look to the future and not back. And I think that we're heading in the right direction, and we're going to get there with a lot more effort.
Any further questions on the report? If not, call the question. All those in favor of the report? Opposed, if any? Report's carried. Next to the agenda is the survey results.
Thank you, Jake. In May of this year, we basically sent out a survey to our members. We realized because of what happened with the water slide that our mandate could potentially be changing, and we wanted the input from our members. 562 people responded to the survey. I'll briefly give the results. The first question is, should SSPS continue as a society? 560 people answered. 96.8% of 542 said yes. 18 people, 3.2% said no. The other question was, if yes, SSPS is mandated to protect Skaha Park. Please select your preferred mandate for SSPS. 2, continue to protect only Skaha Park for commercial development. B, broaden our mandate to include promotion protection of all Penticton parks. 546 people answered. 19.6% or 107 answered just basically continue with Skaha Park. 80.4% responded. 439 people responded with broaden our mandate. Any questions about that? If not, what I'll do is I'll put forward a motion to accept the results of the survey.
Second on the motion. Seconded. Are there questions on the survey? There are questions? No? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. One more point.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add is that when we sent out the information about the proposal, there was a fault with one of the email systems, or a couple of email systems that some people didn't get. I had resent it again, basically to make sure that everybody did. But if anybody did not receive the proposal that had been sent to the city by Jerry and Gary, please let us know and I'll make sure you get it, because there was some problems with certain email systems when we sent it out the first time. We did resend it. I have no guarantee that it was successful to everybody, so let me know if you can get it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Next on the motion, or next on the agenda is the motions. I'll hand it over to Caroline.
Thanks, Jake. A special resolutions. The first one is to waive the auditor. Be it resolved that under Part 4, Article 15B6 of the BC Society Act, SSPS agrees to waive the appointment of an auditor. You do the second. That's the motion. Can I have a second, please?
Seconded. Are there any questions on that? Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Back to Caroline.
Thank you. Accountant. This is the second one. Be it resolved that SSPS appoints William J. Waddell, Inc. as the Society's accountant, and I move that motion.
Second on the motion. Seconded. Any questions on that? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. He has to ratify the results of the survey. Oh, he's done it. Oh, sorry about that. I was writing notes. Okay. Motions continue ratification. Do we continue as a society? Did you do that?
No, just the results.
Oh.
Now we have
Oh, down to there. Okay. The name of the society, the new name of the society is Protected Park Society, PPPS.
Is there a seconder on the motion to change our name? There's a seconder on the motion, but we're going to maybe open this up for some discussion from the members of the committee here.
Would you repeat the motion?
Repeat the motion. The name of the society is Protect Penticton Park Society, in brackets PPPS.
I think the interest to that was talked about earlier. Gary, did you wish to add any more to that?
We don't.
That doesn't work.
I think it's entirely appropriate at this stage to rename our society as Protect Penticton Parkland, because as I mentioned earlier, the single issue of Skaha Park is over. Our proposal deals with all Penticton parks. So I think it's logical to change our name. There are disadvantages because a lot of people know who Save Skaha Park is and SSPS, but it does identify what our objective is, and that's this protective, to broaden the scope and then protect it with a park protection or a park dedication bylaw. Where we go in the future, we don't know, because we don't know how this is going to go in 2018. And we don't know where it's going to go after that. But this society will probably morph as we progress. As we've heard, there is a recommendation to establish City Council to establish a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Where we fit in with them, I don't know, but we just have to look far enough ahead right now to think about getting the bylaw approved by council, and from there we'll see what happens next year at this time, whether we break into subcommittees or, but it's an unknown. But I support the motion to change the name.
You've heard the explanation as to why we wish to change the name, and it's pretty obvious really, because the Skaha Park thing, as we've heard tonight, and we certainly heard through the city administrator, that the issue with Trio is done, it's over with, their contract's canceled, the lease is gone. So basically what we've done in our initiative here 2.5 years ago was to get rid of that contract and protect that parkland as we have done and achieved that. So, again, as Gary has indicated, as we've been discussing earlier, the intent now, of course, is to look after all the parks so that no other council in the future can take away the grassland and the trees that have been established in this community. So I support the motion to change our name. I think the recognition is there from the community that we need to do that as a society, and if we want to continue on, I think it's necessary for us to change our name and our objectives here in working with the city government. Is there anybody has a question on this? Yes, ma'am.
I'm all for the idea, but I was just wondering if it might be better to be called the Penticton Parks Protection Society.
It gets a little long and lengthy, but I think it covers the point that you're making. The title does. I think that covers it pretty well. Anyone else has a question on the change of the name?
What about in regards to the ALR, Agricultural Land Reserves? Do you think that should be included in with the parks?
That's out of our jurisdiction. That's provincial government anyway.
Okay.
They decide those issues, whether the council wishes to take that land out of the ALR.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't deal with that. Okay, I see no other hands coming up. I'll call the question on the motion to change our name. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. We are now entering into a new objective. Back to the lady in blue.
Thanks, Dave. And the purpose of the park of the society are two, and there are four sub-titles. Number one is advocate for the protection, preservation of parklands that provide a nature experience to residents and to visitors. Number two, advocate for our civic leaders to provide stewardship of our public parklands as per the community charter and safeguard them as unencumbered assets freely accessible to all for public use and enjoyment. Number three, monitor City of Penticton policy and planning proposals for their impact on the size, quality and accessibility of Penticton parkland. And the last one, number four, we reserve the right to oppose commercial development in any Penticton park that is, in our opinion, not consistent with or ancillary to the assigned primary purpose, up to and including seeking remedy in court. I move the motion.
That's clarification on the intent of the new name. Is there a second on the motion? Seconded. Are there any questions on that?
Just a quick comment, Jay.
Comment by Jerry. Dr. Carr. Somebody over there. Yes, sir. Just a second.
Yeah, just to make it clear, this section will now become our constitution and will then be submitted to the Registrar of Societies with all communities to update the status of our society.
Thank you. Yes, over back there. There's a hand. Yes, sir.
Can you repeat number 4, please?
Yes.
We reserve the right to oppose commercial development in any Penticton park that is, in our opinion, not consistent with or ancillary to the assigned primary purpose, up to and including seeking remedy in court.
Does that not, putting the notwithstanding clause, does that not kind of sound like what's already in section 3 of the bylaw about commercialization being ancillary to their purposes? And again, I go back to what I said earlier, commercialization hasn't even been defined in any proposals yet. So I'm concerned that the section there about opposing commercialization is pretty broad and vague, and almost kind of seems like it could invite the argument that a huge 100-seat restaurant is ancillary to the use of a park, for example. And I think it kind of still leaves that window open.
I think the intent, if you take an understanding of that intent that was went to you under section 4, is certainly to recognize as a society that if there's an intrusion into a parkland with respect to commercialization which destroys the intent and the use of the parkland, then obviously it would be an objection by this society. So really and truly, if any city council, I guess, wish to pursue some commercial aspect, whether it be restaurant, whatever, which intrudes into the park and causes us as a society to take notice and take action, that's where that allows us to do that under our mandate. Terry, do you wish to talk to that as well? We have a short cord on this microphone.
Just that at this point, we don't know what's going to happen to the park dedication bylaw and to the protection that it would provide if it was worded as we want it to be worded. And so all this does is it states the society's role to do everything we can to protect our parks from commercial development that we don't think fits with the purpose of the park. And obviously, we're going to be leaning as a society away from commercial developments that are going to dominate the park. So I don't think there's any reason why we need to be concerned about that. It simply adds strength to the society to speak out and, if necessary, to oppose, including legal action, if necessary, proposed incursions into our park that would be constitute disposition for commercial or other purposes.
I'm just wondering if the words any and all commercialization may be more appropriate instead of just commercialization.
Well, we reserve the right to oppose commercial development. But if there's some commercial development in a park, and you're right, it's not defined, but if that commercial development is something that we don't object to, and there is not, we put off a trial balloon and the public says, it doesn't bother us, then we're not going to object to it. So it says that we reserve the right to oppose commercial development. Well, it's not defined, that's up to the society. But it just, as Jerry said, it's stated right in our mandate, our constitution and our bylaws, that we're prepared to defend our parks from commercialization.
In the sense of intrusion, as I said, if it intrudes and destroys the concept of the park and the vision of the park, then obviously we're going to take objection to that process by council. And as is being discussed here all through the evening, the position before council now is to make sure that we get that bylaw passed that we presented this evening, and that they adhere to that. And that means consultation with us as a society, maybe. Okay, I hope I carried that for you. You understand that?
I understand where you're coming from. I guess my concern is the foot in the door syndrome, where something starts slowly, it's not objected to, and the next thing it's bigger, and that's my concern.
Yeah, speaking as a former one of those sitting in City Hall, I can tell you this councilman and anybody running for council in the future will get their rear end burned if they attempt to do this again, because it's obviously the politics of this has hurt this council very badly. Yes, ma'am.
I am very pleased with the change in the name and the direction of this group. My main concern all along has been the commercialization of Okanagan Lake and the beachfront from the Lakeside Hotel down to Sycamores. In terms of commercialization, that took over for a while, basically the sandy beach that we have, or the beachfront. There was very little room for families to come down and enjoy the beach, if we will, because just by the beach, in that little area, which the city had increased the size of the walkway to start with, in other words, encroaching on the beach, there were at times 8 vendors on the beach. This was with our high water. It was really quite a joke in terms of, and I'm wondering, so it's not, in my eyes, it's not the size of the development particularly, but the amount of beach space that is
it's
being
the
taken.
encroachment of those commercial operations into the sand in the beachfront. I understand where you're coming from. I recollect this committee did have some discussion on that because it was raised through the summer. There were a lot of letters, I think, to the editor suggesting that was overcrowding. And Peter here has just advised me that he pulled them off the beach because of that encroachment into the sand in the area where, of course, we didn't have a lot of sand this summer.
I really, we all that frequent that beach very much appreciated that move. The vendors did not, and they made that known too. But we did because, as you say, that's the purpose of the park.
I think the intent, and certainly as I see it as we go forward as a committee and society, I think this committee certainly will be looking into how the city approaches the commercialization of the beach fronts and the sand. Because it is an intrusion into the public access to it. You know, it got a little overwhelming as is indicated earlier. Yes, sir, in the back.
I would appreciate if the motion was reread, because I think there's already discussion.
You want the motion reread, sir? Is that what you want?
Have been buried, and I'm not so sure that the fourth point is not redundant when we listen closely to those first three.
We're talking about the three sections of that, the four sections.
The purposes of the society are to: 1. Advocate for the protection and preservation of parklands that provide a nature experience to residents and to visitors. 2. Advocate for our civic leaders to provide stewardship of our public parklands as per the community charter and safeguard them as unencumbered assets freely accessible to all for public use and enjoyment. 3. Monitor City of Penticton policy and planning proposals for their impact on the size, quality and accessibility of Penticton parkland. 4, we reserve the right to oppose commercial development in any Penticton park that is, in our opinion, not consistent with or ancillary to the assigned primary purpose up to and including seeking remedy in court.
I've been asked to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion is carried. Thank you very much.
The last special resolution, directors. Pursuant to section 25(2) of the SSPS bylaws, which states the number of directors must be 5 or greater, be it resolved that Article 25(2) be amended to read, the number of directors must be 7. I move the motion.
Second on the motion. Seconded. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
What's the purpose behind the change?
Just to establish how many directors are required to make a quorum and a committee structure.
Well, there was one that said 5 or more.
Pardon?
There was one that said 5 or more.
And last year it said
That was last year.
It was 6 last year.
We're introducing a new requirement of 7.
Specifically 7.
Yes. That's what it's reading. Any further questions, sir? No? No other hands? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you again. One opposition. Okay, moving on down to the agenda.
New business.
Under new business. Yeah. Under new business, we've received correspondence from Hannah Highland. And I'm going to read it to you because it is essential for you to understand what's being said here and understanding, of course, the way we've been operating over the last years, 2.5 years. The letter reads as follows. She has submitted 25 signatures, mostly members of this Save Skaha Park Society. And she puts forward, she requires that we have open meetings, input from members, and the possibility to communicate with any of the directors questions or concerns about the parks. She goes on to state, we believe that this kind of open policy would benefit the society and the goals to save our or protect Penticton's parks. I'm going to move to the receipt of that letter. Somebody second that? I'm going to speak to it. Seconded. With regards to the content of the letter, as I advised and certainly have heard from our committee members here, each and every one of us has got our name in the phone book. Each and every one has got an email address. Each and every one of us, and I've met several times with certain people, that we are open to meet at any time, listen to or hear or have you represent your interest at the committee structures. It's not a closed meeting. We do not operate our committee structures in closed meetings. We operate them openly. If you wish to attend, phone one of the directors and ask to attend, and we'll let you know where it is because we do move around town and where we hold our meetings. So I take exception to this, and I think we just like to take the motion forward that we receive and file. Are there any questions on that? Yes, sir.
I just a suggestion that information be sent to all the members, email with the phone numbers, emails, and everything, so that any member can keep that.
Okay, I can take that under advisement because we do have election of officers, and if that happens, of course, we'll look into that in our next committee meeting as to whether we can do that. I will advise you that under the legislation, provincially, you cannot advertise and promote a person's email address without their consent or their address without consent. And it's a heavy fine if you do so without their consent. So we have to get approval. We have to get approval to do that if we need to. And several members of our society, and some of you here tonight, I'm sure, have not submitted any email address to us to correspond with you. But most of our stuff is sent out by email. Lisa, we communicate that as well as we can. We also advertise when there's a significant issue that comes up. And of course, that's a cost to the society, which we try to guard against. But anyway, we do try to communicate everything we can in regards to our activities and what's happening. Of course, you've also seen the communication we have with the media, which has been very good over these last few years. And I will commend them for looking after our interest in interviewing members of this directorship. I can get the tap on the arm here. One very quick thing.
Yeah, we have about 2,200 email addresses, and I know not everybody basically has email and uses it that much. But if you would like, or do not, if we do not have your current email address, and you would like communication, please get that to us, and we'll make sure you get on the list. As well, you can submit questions to us via our website that we maintain. And I realize, again, not everybody have a computer, use websites and so on, but just for your information, that is available as well.
Carolyn?
Yeah, I'll just add to that because on a number of occasions in the past 2.5 years, Lisa and I have met with a couple of members of the society at their request to discuss a couple of issues. Jake has actually met with a couple of people who phoned him at home, and he met with them to talk about an issue. And Wayne and I, as he's the treasurer and I'm a co-author of the checkbook, they wanted to view the books. And on 3 occasions, we arranged a meeting, and on 3 occasions, the person didn't turn up. So if anybody out there actually wants to meet with us to talk about a particular issue, we are absolutely available. Thank you.
And I'm always in the Bellevue coffee shop every morning. Motion to receive and file. Seconder on that? Seconded. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. I'm going to cut things off just for a second because Kevin here wants to change and keep the recording going here. It's just about